Hey everybody, this is Kelly with Inky Hands Warm Hearts. How are you guys today? I am so happy to be here with you and share this really fun video. I'm having the best time using this Paradise Palms stamp set and dies. This is the stamp set and this is the die, and when you buy them together you do save 10%. Check them out in my online store. They'll be linked in the description below, and I've also paired them with the stitch rectangles. I really like using shape dies, and I added that right here in this little piece for the sentiment. I think it looks so great. So this is the one that I used, and we'll be using that today. So let's go ahead and clear off my desk and get started, because this is going to be a great card. All right, so to start out, our base of our card is 8.5 by 5.5, and it is a piece of pale papaya cardstock. I do like to take my corners and put them together, and then I use my bone folder to give it a nice crease so that it'll lay nice and flat for me. Now, the paper that I'm using here is called Tea Boutique Designer Series paper, and it actually goes with a suite that we have that is teacups, but you don't have to use it with teacups. As you can see here, I have made it part of this tropical. See, the other side has these really pretty teacups, and this is the side we're using today. So I'm going to use one here on the outside, but I'm also going to use another on the in. And so I have to find the right piece here. This is the one that goes on the inside. I'm going to go ahead and attach that down. That's all I have on the inside of the card, is a piece of that DSP. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my multi-purpose glue. I love using this glue because it gives me that wiggle room. So when I glue it down, it doesn't just automatically stick hard into my card. It gives me that little bit of room to slide it into place. So I always use my silicone mat when I use multi-purpose glue so that I don't make a mess with the wet glue. I'm going to go ahead and add that and give myself a little border at the bottom. And there we go. So this is 1 inch by 5.5 inches. This little strip of Designer Series paper. And this one is 1 inch by 5.25 inches. Okay, so it's just a little bit smaller. So it's gonna fit right here on my piece of Orchid Oasis. That is the color of that Designer Series paper. You can see that this is gonna give me a nice little mat. We're gonna add this piece down, and we're gonna start with building a scene on this piece of basic white cardstock. Let me see what size it is. I didn't write down this measurement, so we're gonna check it live. So it looks like it's 5.25 by 3.5 inches. And that is gonna end up down here at the bottom, and it's going to be covered up a little bit by this piece. So you want to be aware of that when you start doing your ink blending. You want to make sure that you leave about 3/8 of an inch at the top. So your sky has to come a little farther than you think it is when you start building your scene. So we're going to start with the lightest color of our sky. We're going to start with this really pretty peachy color to form this pretty sunset. I'm going to set all these pieces aside, and I'm going to just move this card up to the corner. And these other pieces, I'm going to move them to the side, and we don't need our silicone mat right now. So I'm just going to grab a piece of scrap paper. And so I'm just going to lay my card onto this piece of scrap paper. I'm going to grab my pale papaya ink, and I'm going to grab a blending brush. And we are going to start blending that sky. So I'm doing a circular motion on my ink pad. I'm going to dab a little bit off. And I'm going to start at the top. Now remember, we have to go down about 3/8 of an inch is going to be covered up with this piece of Designer Series paper. So we're going to start here on the edge, and we're going to work our way in a circular motion down. And a little bit less than halfway is what we're going to do for this really pretty pale papaya color. So we're going to ink up one more time, dab off that dark piece to start with, and we're going to come down a little bit farther. And we're just going to blend that in, circular motion, light pressure. And let's get this one corner that looks a little bit too white for me. All right, we're gonna come in with the second color. So you can see that my sunset is two-toned. Actually, it has three. It has a little purple in there. So we're gonna start with our main color, which is this pale papaya, and then we're gonna build color on top of it. So I'm gonna close this, and we're gonna grab our next color, which is our Flirty Flamingo. And I'm gonna grab my brush for my Flirty Flamingo. We're gonna go ahead and ink that up. Again, I'm gonna spot off to the side. And I'm not gonna add this all over. I'm just gonna slowly introduce it in small parts onto my pale papaya piece. And it just helps give it that glow that a sunset has, just lightly over the top of that pale papaya. So I'm just little by little adding that color in for my sunset. Okay, I'm gonna grab one more time, dab off, and then I'm just gonna add bits and pieces where I want more pinks in my sunset. Down here on this bottom edge. Okay, so now we're gonna start with our water. And so our water is gonna be Tahitian Tide. So it's our new in color. And Orchid Oasis is also a new in color. We're gonna be using that as well. So I'm gonna grab my blending brush and I'm gonna dip it in my Tahitian Tide. And now I'm gonna work my way to the bottom. So I'm going to start and add my water and I'm gonna bring that right up to meet that sunset, okay? So I'm gonna add that, slide it in here. It's okay for those spots that I got on there from ink being on my fingers because we're gonna cover those up with lots of ink and it's gonna be okay. So we're blending kind of our water in place here. All right, so we're gonna get a nice base of this Tahitian Tide. I'm smoothing it over. And of course, I want where it meets the sunset for it to blend really well together. So I'm pushing it up against that peachy sky. So that's what we have so far. Okay, so now we're gonna add our fourth color, which is our Orchid Oasis. So we're gonna pull that color out. We're gonna grab another brush. And this one has the Orchid Oasis. And I'm just gonna start at the line where it meets the sky, okay? So I'm just gonna blend off a little bit, and I'm just gonna start in this sky area. And I really want to build that differentiation between the sky sunset and the water, okay? That's my first thing. Then I'm gonna add a little bit more, and I'm gonna just put it in bits and pieces into my sky area, okay? Just add a little bit of that. Now we're gonna add it to the bottom. Now, when we add it into our Tahitian Tide, I'm gonna go with a light color all over first. So I'm just gonna add a little layer kind of everywhere, swirl that color onto that turquoisey and give it some more blue. And now what I did was I took a piece of scrap paper and I ripped this piece, just a small little piece to use as a mask. And what I'm doing with this is I'm laying it in different spots and I'm inking up my brush in my Orchid Oasis. I'm getting that dark blotchy part off and I am just adding it along that edge. See how it forms that really pretty edge? And I'm gonna move that and I'm gonna do it again. And there's another one. And I'm going to bring it down here. And little by little, I'm kind of building this ledge all over my water. So it kind of looks like the waves are crashing. by adding just that small little piece. You can see how much texture it gives your water. And I'm going to do one more down here. And then I think I'm happy with that. That looks really pretty. Maybe one more in this one corner. Let me add a tiny bit more. All right, there we go. So see, those little parts that I got kind of smudged are fine. Now we're going to do our islands. So those are going to be in crumb cake. You have like this tropical water with these islands in the background, which I think are super cool. Don't you? I love them. I think they turned out so well on my first original card, and we're going to recreate them here. So I am going to go ahead and grab my stamp that's part of the Paradise Palms. It's this one right here. And we are going to grab that stamp, and I'm going to ink it into our crumb cake. And I'm going to turn it upside down where the mound is low instead of high. And I'm going to figure out where I want to stamp that. I think I'm going to put an island kind of low down here at the bottom. So I'm just going to kind of hover that and stamp that right there at the bottom. And then I'm going to do another one a little higher and to the right-hand side of my card and put that one right there. So those are my two little island pieces, okay? Now we're going to work on putting our palm trees on the island. So let me talk to you a little bit about that. So when we do our palm trees on our island, we definitely want to make sure that we have two colors, right? Well, the palms don't come separate. Now the large palms do. You have the two larger and the two greens, but the small sets are all together. So in order to get a nice two-tone look, I'm going to be using my Stampin' Up markers. I'll clean this in a little minute. So I'm going to grab my crumb cake and my soft succulent. Those are the two colors that I've chosen. And I'm going to color the palms. I'm going to start with the lighter color first, the brown. I'm going to use the brush tip, and I'm just going to use the side of the marker, and I'm going to color those trunks of the palms. I'm going to use the same with the succulent. Now the crumb cake comes out of our neutrals, and the soft succulent came out of our last year's in colors. So the 2021 to 2023 in color pack, there's 5 markers in that pack. In the neutrals, there's 10 markers because we have 10 neutrals in our line. We have neutrals, regals, brights, and subtles. And then we have 2 sets of in colors. So little by little, you can just add to your marker collection by buying them 1 color family at a time or 1 in color family at a time. And so once I've markered that up, I'm going to blow on it with kind of an open mouth, huffing onto the stamp to let that hot air kind of re-moisten that brown that I started with and kind of wet my soft succulent. And I'm going to stamp one of these kind of off to the side. I want it on this island, but I want it off. So I don't really want that third palm tree. I just kind of want 2, and I'm going to start it right there. And so there are my 2 palm trees to the side. Now I'm going to do it one more time, and I'm going to add 3 palm trees this time to the right side of my card. So you can see that this card's going to look a little different than the first one. Every time you do it, it's different because why? It's handmade. It's not cookie cutter, right? So that's the beauty of making handmade cards. Every single one you do is made with love, and it's different. So I love making handmade cards, and I love that all my cards are just slightly different. That makes it part of the fun for me. All right, so I've inked up my palms one more time. I'm going to huff on them. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my palms down here on the island and a little bit over to the right-hand side. We will add them on. There we go. I'm going to drop my island down. Since I kind of went off a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and add one more island piece, but I'm just going to stamp off so it's not so dark. And I'm just going to try and mirror that down at the bottom. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side so that I have some consistency, only this time I'm just going to move it up a little, and that gives you that illusion of the islands. Okay, let's go ahead and clean our 2 stamps, and then we're going to stamp our words, which say, hope you find a little paradise wherever you may be, which I think is perfect for this card because we basically created a beautiful paradise scene, didn't we? All right. Now we have to also do our sunset, our sun in the sky there, but let's start with our, little sentiment. We're going to grab our Orchid Oasis back in here, ink that up. We'll stamp that right here in the center of our piece. There we go. Hope you find a little paradise wherever you may be. And then for our sun, I'm going to show you how I made it. I'm going to ink it into Pale Papaya. And then I'm going to use my brush, and I'm just going to tap just to pull a tiny little bit of that Pale Papaya off. Then I'm going to grab my Flirty Flamingo. I'm going to grab my brush, and I'm just going to use it and tap, kind of pouncing a little color on the end of that circle just on one side. And then I'm going to go ahead and place it here in the center of my card. And see how pretty that is? So every time you do it, you're going to get a different looking sunset, a different looking island. It's just so pretty. I love the way that that looks. Let's go ahead and clean our sun and our sentiments. And then let's put our card together. This wasn't too bad, right? Did you enjoy seeing how I've created that pretty misty water? I think it looks really great. So let's go ahead and bring our silicone mat back out, and we're going to go ahead and add our adhesive to the back. And I'm going to layer that on my Orchid Oasis at the bottom. And it's just going to form a really tiny little border of that Orchid Oasis showing. Okay, and then I'm going to take my little designer series paper and I'm going to add that to the top. So let's go ahead and put our adhesive on the back of it. I'm going to go in a rectangle first and then fill in the middle. We're going to add that to the top. And again, I'm going to use that as my guide and just make sure that I have a nice little border showing right there. So that is our scene. Look at how beautiful that is. I love how that turned out. So we're going to attach that onto our front of our card. So let's go ahead and go again in a rectangle. And then we're going to fill in the center. That pop of color of that Pale Papaya around that beautiful Orchid Oasis, I think is so pretty. And so now we're going to add our little sentiment here in this corner. I'm going to use some dimensionals. These are Stampin' Dimensionals, and I'm going to put 4 of them. And I'm going to use my Take Your Pick tool. I like to pull the backs off with it. They all get attached all together, and I can put them all in my trash can at the same time. That way they don't end up on my floor. All right, and let's bring this in and figure out where I want to place it. I think I want that little paradise right on that line between the designer series paper where it meets that cardstock that we've ink blended. I really like that. All right, So there we go. And then let's add a little bit of bling. Every card needs a little bit of bling, don't you think? So I'm going to be using our iridescent rhinestones. And I love these. I have gone through, this is, I think, is my second or third pack of them. I love them. So I have the large, and then I have medium and small. I'm going to use the small today. So let's grab my, take your pick tool again. I'm going to use the putty end this time. And let's kind of, I always shape it before I start. I'm going to put one here by the palm trees. And then we'll put one up here on the words. And then let's add one on the island over here by the other palm, right there. And what I love about these iridescent rhinestones is that they take on the color of whatever you put them on. So they're so versatile. Like, it looks much more pink on there because it's behind that flirty flamingo, whereas it looks more blue and more brown when you put it on the other pieces. So that's a really plus. So there's our card. Again, we use the Paradise Palms stamp set and dies. I hope that you enjoyed watching me make this card. Definitely check out the description below where I have put all the items that I use, the ink colors, the cardstock, the different dies, all of them are showcased. And I hope that you'll join me again soon. This is Kelly with Inky Hands Warm Hearts. Happy stamping, guys!